The dark secret of the summer of 1993. John stepped into the old lakeside house in Minnesota for the first time since his father's death, and everything was just as he remembered. The scent of aged wood mixed with the humid lake air, bringing a gentle wave of nostalgia for his childhood. But this time, the sweetness of those memories was soured by the grief of his father's passing. While gathering his father's belongings in the attic, he found a dusty shoebox in a corner. On the box, in his father's shaky handwriting, were the words, Cassette 166. Inside, there was nothing but the tape itself. A consuming curiosity gnawed at John. What could this be? John placed the cassette into his father's old tape player and pressed play. At first, there was only a static-filled silence. Then, a voice, familiar yet alien, broke through. His father's voice, thick with fear. We shouldn't have done it. We have to hide this forever. No one can ever know. The words tightened a knot in John's chest. The tremble in his father's voice told him everything. His father whispered a name. Molly. John's memory dredged up an old news clipping about a young girl who had drowned in the lake during the summer of 1993. At the time, it had been ruled an accident. But the regret in his father's voice hinted at something far more sinister. His father confessed that Molly's death was no accident, and that he and a group of friends had covered up the evidence. John listened in disbelief. The biggest shock came when his father uttered another name involved in the incident. Jim Peterson, the town's highly respected sheriff. Toward the end of the tape, his father's voice turned into a plea. Son, if you ever find this, I want you to know how sorry and scared I was. This house can't hold this secret anymore. With this confession, his father left John a choice. Protect his reputation and bury the secret forever, or reveal the web of lies the entire town was built on. John stopped the tape. In his hands, he held not just a cassette, but his father's painful confession and a secret he had kept for years. Every crackle of the tape ignited a storm of anger and sorrow within him. Why would his father leave him with this burden? How could this town have lived with such a lie for so long? John grabbed the cassette and got into his car. His gaze fell on the lake through the window. Its surface shimmered brightly, but the dark secrets beneath it seemed to choke that clarity. John knew he had to put an end to this lie for his father and for Molly. He started the car, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts, and drove to the only place he could think of, Sheriff Jim Peterson's office. But when he arrived, the lights were off. A note was tacked to the door. Left town for an urgent family matter. John's heart sank as he read the note. The sheriff had somehow found out and had fled. Or worse, the cassette in John's hand was no longer just a confession. It was a key to finding the sheriff. The secret of the lakeside house was no longer just between John and his father. The fate of the entire town now rested on John's next move. John stood on the town's main street, in front of a deserted office. The cassette was a key, not just to his father's secret, but to the truth behind Sheriff Jim Peterson's escape. Just then, a car pulled up behind him. The man who got out was Sheriff Jim Peterson. Jim looked exhausted and broken. His face not that of a man on the run, but one who had come back. Jim's eyes filled with tears when he saw the cassette in John's hand. "You found it," he whispered. "Your father's guilt never let him go." Jim told John everything. In the summer of 1993, they had a party by the lake. A very drunk Molly fell into the water and drowned. In their panic, they didn't know what to do, and Jim, fearing a murder investigation, offered to cover it up. John's father had initially objected, but Jim's persistence and the threat to his future career as sheriff had convinced him. That night had changed both their lives forever. Jim said, "I visited your father's grave yesterday. There's something people don't know. Every year on her birthday, your father would write anonymous letters to Molly's family, expressing his sorrow. I found a photo in one of those letters that I think belonged to him. It was an old group photo of me, your father, and Molly. Before I said my final goodbye to your father, I left a note for him. It read, 'I admire your father's courage to tell the truth. I can't tell you how sorry I am. I left everything I had with me at your father's grave and had to leave town. John took a deep breath as he processed what he heard. He realized his father had carried the weight of that secret and lived with a gnawing guilt for years. His father's grave had been his final refuge. Jim turned to John and said, "When your father recorded this tape, he didn't give it to me. I think he wanted someone to reveal the truth after he was gone." John's father had been torn between guilt and the desire to keep it all a secret. He was burning up, silently, from the inside. Jim handed John a note with Molly's grave location and her family's address. "You're the one to reveal the truth. Either you keep this secret forever, or you pay our debt to the town," he said. John took the cassette and the note. He understood that his father's legacy wasn't just a house, but a matter of conscience. The next day, John went to a local television station and handed them the cassette. As the story shook the town, John returned to the lakeside house. Now, the lake's surface didn't just reflect peace, but the reflection of a soul that had been cleansed. His father's cassette had put an end to the town's lies. John had done the right thing for the souls of his father and Molly.